The impossible only becomes possible when men and women decide to never turn back and never give up. Hey, it's Lucas Skrobot, and you're listening to Weaver and Loom. Welcome to episode 83 of Weaver and Loom, Own the Future. It is a podcast where we talk about how to be change makers, how to make a difference in the world, how to own our future, how to shape our destiny, how to weave our narrative, the stories that you and I will end up telling to our children and our great-great-grandchildren. Today we are finishing up the 5-part series on things that were impossible until they weren't. We shared stories of the Wright brothers and sister who, against all odds, overcame the financial difficulties. They were self-funded. They weren't educated. They weren't the top scientists, but they broke through, and they were the first humans to ever fly. We shared about William Wilberforce and how he gave his entire life to the ending of slavery, and he died 3 days after hearing that slavery was abolished in England. Now, we also learned that there's still a lot to do as far as slavery goes worldwide. There's still 40 million slaves globally, and you and I have a responsibility to stand up and do something about that in big or little ways. We talked about Roger Bannister and how he broke the 4-minute mile. For hundreds of years, people tried to break the 4-minute mile, but couldn't. But he persevered, he broke through, and he did it in conditions that were not ideal. Against all critics, he overcame. We shared the story of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And from that episode yesterday, we took away our heart posture in the midst of it, as we are faced with resistance and criticism and people who don't want to see us succeed. How should we posture our hearts? How should we live our lives? Go back and listen to that episode if you haven't. I think it's maybe one of the most powerful things that we've talked about this whole week. And today we are telling a story of an explorer, Leif Erikson. And, many people think that Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas. But as it turns out, Leif Erikson was the one who first European to discover the Americas, but he has a sadly tragic story. And it's a very little known story, and it goes like this. It was about 1000 AD. Leif Erikson had already discovered Greenland. He had now heard about this land that was seen off into the west. He and his crew decide to go and find and explore this brand new, brave land, and they get to the shores, and what do they see? They see a dog standing on the shore barking. They said it was a really big dog. So they kind of tacked up and down the shore trying to find a place to come into port, but this dog just kept on following them. So they were like, well, you know what? I don't know. That dog's really big, kind of scary. I'm going to turn back. So they turned back, and they were that close to actually being the first ones to discover the Americas. But there was a dog, and they were afraid of it. So they didn't get off the ship. Okay, that didn't actually happen, but I did read on a satire site. The link is in the profile, and it was so funny. It was the stories of 5 explorers who would have found America, but there was a dog on the shore, so they decided not to actually go and explore. So Leif Erikson was actually the first European to land in the Americas. He doesn't normally get credit, but he was the first. But even though that story isn't factual, it's actually quite true. It's the story of so many of our lives. We get to the place of achievement. We're like so close. And then the dogs of doom, fear, starts barking at us. The critics start barking at us. And we're like, I don't know. It's kind of risky. That dog's kind of big. I mean, what could happen? Maybe it just wasn't meant to work out. It happens so often. So often. It's not even like on the big things, but sometimes it's the little things in life. Day in, day out. We draw back from achieving or pursuing or attempting. Why? Because we hear the dogs barking. And we're like, It's kind of big. What if it bites? I mean, I don't really like dogs. I'll just play it safe. At least he'll say I was the first person to have the idea. I was the first person to see the new land. I didn't actually go there or explore, but it's good enough. Better play it safe than get bit or get hurt. It happens to so many of us. Another story that I've been thinking about when thinking about impossible things, thinking about men and women who persevered and never gave up through thousands of trials, and that would be the one and only Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, on record, says that there are at least 3,000 attempts at building an incandescent light bulb. That means 3,000 times. He tried filament after filament after filament, and he failed. What would have happened if he got to 2,997 and said, you know what? I guess it is. It really is impossible. Not knowing that if he tried 1, 2, 3 more times, he would have changed the world forever. Good news is he didn't give up. The other story of Thomas Edison is he was trying to create the world's first battery. And records show that he attempted 10,000 different batteries. And one day, Walter Mallory shows up to his lab and he sees scatter across the desks him and his other engineers working on hundreds and hundreds of batteries that have all failed. And Walter says to him, "It's a shame." He says to Thomas Edison, "It's a shame, all this tremendous work and effort that you have put in to discovering the first battery, and you have no results. It must be so discouraging." And Thomas Edison turns to him and he says, "Results? Why, man, I have gotten results. I know several thousand things that won't work." And what a mindset to look at 10,000 failures and say, this was actually a result. There are now 10,000 things that I know for a fact will not work to produce a battery, but there will be something that will produce a battery. And we wouldn't be talking today if it wasn't for Thomas Edison discovering the world's first battery. The thing that I have taken away from this week is probably there's multiple levels. One, it would be principles. So many of these individuals were driven by principles. They were so consumed. They didn't live a balanced life. They weren't worried about, how much time am I spending on this? Is it really worth it? They gave themselves fully, passionately into the thing that they were driven to do, the vision that they had that they must complete in their lifetime. Secondly, they never gave up. They didn't turn back. They didn't quit. They had failure after failure, time after time. They could have quit, but they said, no, I'm going to persevere. I'm not going to turn back. I am not going to give up. And whether in our lives we reach that pinnacle that we're chasing or not, it is the process of never giving up and persevering that creates something of worth and value within us. Now, I'm not one of those guys who think it's all about the journey. Don't worry about the destination. I think the destination is extremely important. The vision that we have for our life, where we are going, is extremely important. We need to enjoy the journey. We need to fall in love with the practice, with the work. The ends do not justify the means, but we need to have a vision of where we are going. And that vision, without it, we will perish, we will die, we will shrivel up, and we have to put it in front of us day in, day out, and remember where we are going and why are we going there, because the destination is extremely important. That's all for this episode. That's all for this week on things that were impossible until they weren't. Please share this with one friend. If you've enjoyed and listened to these stories, share it with a friend. It would mean so much to me, and it would probably mean a lot to your friend, because who doesn't like being inspired to achieve their dreams? Also, if you have a question about any of these episodes, please DM me, email me at lucasgrobot.com or at lucasgrobot on Instagram or on LinkedIn. Stay tuned, as next week we are launching into a 10-part series on lessons and stories from my new book, Anchor the Discipline to Stop Drifting, which comes out October the 3rd. Yes, there's finally a date. I'm excited to announce that to you. Listen in, tune in, and if you put the work in, you could change your life. That's all for today's episode. You're listening to Weaver and Loom, where destiny is woven.